Imagine waking up to the soft drizzle on cobblestones, the whistle of a kettle, and the sound of phrases that carry centuries of charm. This is the heartbeat of a British morning. Stay with me through this story, and by the end, you'll not only feel like you've lived it, you'll have picked up expressions that make conversations truly authentic. Don't forget to hit subscribe, because more stories like this will transport you straight into the soul of English life. The story begins in a quiet London neighborhood where the fog has rolled in like a soft blanket. Edward, a 32-year-old teacher, wakes up in his modest flat with the familiar sound of his alarm clock chirping. He stretches, rubs his eyes, and mutters, "Right then, let's crack on." That simple phrase, "crack on," is an everyday British expression meaning to get started, to move forward with purpose. He's alone, but speaking aloud helps him set the tone for the day. The kettle clicks on, and Edward grins. In Britain, tea isn't just a drink, it's a ritual, a grounding force. He fills the pot, waits for the whistle, and says to himself, "Fancy a cuppa." It's an invitation that could melt even the iciest of moments. Today, it's just Edward and his tea, but the phrase is a cultural glue, one that binds strangers, friends, and families. He pours the steaming liquid into his mug, stirs it thoughtfully, and takes the first sip with a satisfied sigh. "Lovely jubbly," he whispers. That quirky expression, popularized by television, means fantastic, just right. Outside, the drizzle begins to thicken. Edward pulls on his coat, grabs an umbrella, and heads out. The streets smell faintly of toast and fried eggs drifting from windows. A neighbor, Mrs. Henderson, waves from across the street. She's in her late 60s, wrapped in a shawl, with a cheerful look despite the damp. "Morning, love," she calls. British mornings often begin with endearments like love, mate, or duck in some regions. These aren't romantic, they're cultural shorthand for friendliness. Edward tips his hat slightly and replies, "Morning, Mrs. H. Bit nippy today, isn't it?" The phrase bit nippy means it's cold, and indeed, the wind cuts through his scarf. Mrs. Henderson chuckles, "Aye, brass monkeys out here." The odd phrase, "cold enough to freeze the balls off a brass monkey," is one of those colorful British idioms that brighten even the bleakest day. As Edward continues walking, he passes the corner cafe, the Red Kettle. Through the windows, he sees commuters grabbing bacon butties, sandwiches filled with bacon, butter, and bread rolls. The owner, Raj, a middle-aged man with a booming laugh, spots him and shouts, "Morning, Ed. Fancy a bacon sarnie." Edward laughs, "Not today, mate. Running late." Here, sarnie is a British word for sandwich, casual and warm. He heads for the tube station. On the platform, crowds shuffle impatiently. The train screeches in, and Edward mutters, "About time." The man next to him nods, typical, "innit." That "innit," short for "isn't it," is peppered across Britain, a linguistic stamp of familiarity. They both climb aboard, pressed shoulder to shoulder with dozens of strangers, yet the silence of the morning commute is punctuated only by coughs, the rustle of newspapers, and the robotic announcements of the tube operator. Edward gets off at Holborn, where he teaches English as a second language. His students are from across the world, eager to learn not just grammar but the soul of the language. He begins class with a smile, "Right, today we're going to talk about expressions you'll actually hear on the street." His students perk up. They've learned the textbooks, but today, Edward is bringing them the music of real speech. He writes on the board, "Chuffed to bits." He explains, "This means very pleased, very happy. For example, I was chuffed to bits when I passed my driving test." He pauses, looks at the class, and adds, "Trust me, you'll hear it." The students repeat it, laughing at the rhythm. Next, he teaches them gutted. This means really disappointed. If your favorite football team loses, you might say, "I was gutted." A student from Spain raises her hand, like heartbroken. Edward nods, "Exactly, but in a very British way." The lesson continues, blending story, humor, and morning culture. Edward weaves in expressions like "Bob's your uncle," meaning, "There you go, it's done, fancy that," an expression of mild surprise, and "knackered," utterly exhausted. His students scribble notes, repeating after him, laughing at the quirks. By the end, they not only understand the words, they understand the life wrapped around them. At lunch, Edward walks through the bustling streets of Covent Garden. Street performers juggle, tourists snap photos, and the smell of roasted chestnuts fills the air. He buys a sandwich and a bottle of Ribena from a vendor. As he eats, he overhears conversations laced with expressions. A man telling his mate, "I'm skint till payday," meaning broke, a woman sighing, "Can't be bothered today," a phrase expressing reluctance. Each phrase is a doorway into the culture. The afternoon stretches on with more lessons, more laughter, more expressions stitched into the fabric of British mornings. When school ends, Edward wanders into a small pub. The landlord greets him warmly, "All right, Gov." Edward grins, "Not too bad. Pint of bitter, please." They chat about the weather, politics, football, all framed in expressions that make the mundane sparkle. By evening, Edward returns to his flat, tired but satisfied. He sits by the window, watching the rain fall softly against the glass. He reflects on the day, the kettle, the neighborly greetings, the classroom filled with curiosity, the voices on the street. Each part of his morning has been wrapped in expressions, simple yet powerful. They're more than words, they're windows into the heart of British life. And so, the story of a British morning isn't just about tea, toast, or trains. It's about the expressions that shape conversations, the phrases that carry warmth, humor, and identity. To live a British morning is to step into a rhythm of language that connects past and present, stranger and friend, silence and laughter. If you've enjoyed living this British morning with me, imagine how many more stories and expressions are waiting for you. Language isn't just vocabulary, it's experience, it's culture, it's connection. So don't just stop here, hit that subscribe button, share this with your friends, and let's keep exploring the world, one story at a time. Cheers, and see you in the next one.